So once again, we are back into just picking whichever two factions feel like. In this case, we went with chat suggestions on Twitch. They suggested to me Tomb Kings and Bretonnia. So up against the Lizardmen of our opponent, Count Leek, we have counterpicked with Tomb Kings, and we are trying a variant of the armor debuff build. I have a good number of tools. Debuff armor, actually 3 different methods. Tomb King is AoE Aura, Soul Blight, and the ROR Archers. Now, previously when we ran this first Felcon, we got overrun by Pterodons, Skinks. So to prevent that, we brought Skirmishers and the Eyes of the Desert this time. So we'll see if we can control them well enough and starting going into the game. We're seeing that my opponent has gone for a mass skink army. An interesting choice. He has a bunch of chameleon skinks too. And also these red cresteds are beginning to advance. So to deal with them, we have our horsemen. We'll be cycle charging into them. And that should work out pretty well. Because we can just rapidly disengage before we take too much damage. For these skinks along the side, we can just collapse in on them with the Nehekara horsemen. They are not great fighters, and we should be able to catch them out. The front line is advancing though. Thankfully for us, red cresteds are quite vulnerable to archer fire, so we'll pull back our infantry and run in with our archers. On this left area, it looks like our horsemen are getting sort of collapsed in on. They're not in a great position, so we're going to start disengaging there. We do actually manage to ride off some skinks though, which is good. And with the front line underway, let's see, I think it's time we bring in our horsemen to actually support. So they'll be charging into the sides of these skinks, and our archers are looking to be in a good position to win off this right flank. So we're not too worried there. We can focus our efforts here. And let's see, I guess we're going to need to bounce this Tomb Prince around, or Tomb King around, through the infantry where he can. We haven't really found a good use for our spells yet either, so we'll just continue holding our Winds of Magic, regroup our cavalry, try and get them into a good position. Manticore summon does go down, and this seems like a nice opportunity to throw a net down on it. The Manticore summon is pretty scary, especially versus my Tomb King, and the net should be able to negate most of its value. There's also this solar engine here in the back. I could chase it with my Lord, but these chameleon skinks worry me a bit, so I'm going to instead avoid that and bring back my Lord instead. He'll be trying to rout off the red cresteds and also trying to jump onto Nakai. So that's going to be the goal. If we can actually get him to move there, and there we go. Looks like he does manage to get there. But I think we really need to step up our cavalry game, because these skinks are beginning to overrun us. Bring in the Eyes of the Desert, and we're going to try sniping out Nakai now. We have our armor. No, we actually don't have any spells. A little bit worrisome, but we do have a lot of ranged pressure to actually engage him. We can throw down some Ushabti too to hold down the troops. And as long as we keep our cavalry alive, I think we should be fine. The cavalry will be able to to really hammer down on these skinks. And even though the chameleon skinks are a little bit worrisome, I think with enough cavalry we should be good. We're sending them in onto the chameleon skinks now, and the focus fire on Nakai is going actually pretty terribly. Looks like he's using his attack animations, or no, he's just staggering. And while staggering, he just happens to be dodging a ton of my archer fire. A little bit unfortunate, but nevertheless, we do manage to catch out the skinks. Our Lord is still healthy, so he'll be able to cycle charge. And we're going to bring him back now to deal with this Bastillodon. Let's see here. In the meantime, our cavalry is going to chase off the chameleon skinks. And they are quite annoying. They're very hard to catch, but they're also running low on ammunition. So heading into the late game, I'm feeling a lot more confident. Let's see, because also the single entities for us are quite advantaged, just thanks to our Lord. And it looks like the Manticore summon's actually going for my caster. This is a good situation for me, because we don't really have a lot of Winds of Magic left anyways. And my caster is... Let's see here. Yeah, my caster, we have a backup one for when we do eventually regain our ammo. So that should, yeah, that feels fine. I think we're okay there. But the Bastiladon should be running out of ammunition too. And as soon as the ammo is done for my opponent, we have a lot less to worry about. Our Lord is still quite healthy. And we also have the Elite Eyes of the Desert alive too. So even though the balance of power is slightly disfavored for us, we do have the advantage in terms of composition. Everything here is just skinks, and skinks are very prone to routing. We'll just have to see if that ammunition actually finishes off my troops. My Nahakara horsemen are quite low, and because I only have one unit left, I'll want to be extremely careful there. The Kai now getting low on HP. We're going to turn our Eyes of the Desert to fire in on him, and their faster shots should be able to make better contact. Looks like it does, and the Kai is now on the verge of routing off the map. And if we can get him killed, that would be great, especially against this Feral Bastiladon. A charge from our Lord will be able to rout it off, very likely. There we go. It looks like it's now on its way off of the battlefield. There's only really one dangerous single entity fighter left for my opponent. The Chameleon Skinks don't have enough ammunition to kill my Lord. Balance of power is now tipping into our favor, and we're going to keep our horsemen safe until the ammunition is gone for these guys. The horsemen will have a very rough time with... let's see, yeah. The horsemen will die if they keep getting shot by the Skinks. So we very much don't want that. And yeah, we'll just be running with them. Now, let's see here. There is still a Chameleon Skink unit with a lot of ammunition. That's a little bit worrying. I think if it was just my Lord left, I'd be a little bit more worried. But the fact that we also have the Eyes of the Desert mean that we should be good. Our remaining infantry will likely die to the Skinks though. So there's a lot we'll have to be careful of. Let's see, we also want to free up our Lord as soon as possible so he can actually come in to support the mainline fight. And we're going to be using our horsemen to chase off the Bastiladon. As soon as they get in range, we'll bring our Lord back into action. Let's see, this is Lich Priest of Light. I guess we'll move him back with these troops just to provide what little melee attack he can. He'll do okay versus Skink Priest of Beasts, and that's basically all we need him to do. And for our Stalkers, we'll turn off fire at will so that we can ensure that their ammunition goes fully into the Bastiladon. Our Skeleton Spears will engage on the Chameleon Skinks. And as soon as our Lord gets here, we should be fine. There is still the Bastiladon, which is a little bit of a problem. So we really want our Lord to get into position. And it looks like the Chameleon Skinks here have actually decided to pull back to pepper away at my Lord. Interesting decision from my opponent. It could work out, but my Lord actually gets a solid charge on them. And it looks like he might actually get them to rout. That would be amazingly good for us. And I'm going to continue pushing that situation. So we're going to get our horsemen in here too. And the horsemen are going to try and intercept them. My Lord is still doing relatively healthy too. And if we can rout them off, it's a lot of ammunition lost for those Skinks. The fight over here is going okay. It will eventually lose because of the Bastiladon, but I think I'll hold it long enough for these guys to really get engaged. We'll see though. The slowing effects from the Skinks is quite effective, but as soon as we get the bonus movement from the charge speed, we might be able to catch them. Just sort of holding my breath to see if we can do that. But we actually do have a Lich Priest of Light. We could have thrown down a net on them, but at this point their ammunition is so low, I think it's not really worth throwing down a net anymore. So instead we'll just bring in our Lord here to help out the Stalkers and take out this solar engine. My opponent shouldn't really have any more ammunition left, so we should be fine. If he did have a unit of Skinks at full ammo, that would be really bad for us, but just based on the balance of power and what we've seen, I think should be good. Now the Skink Chief too, in the back is pretty threatening. He is pretty scary, just because actually no, he's not that scary. What am I talking about? All of our troops left currently have very high armor, and because of that, the Skinks really won't be able to do much. It's sort of like having Durthu against the Lizardmen. Just the high armor will really run out these games. Our Lord too has his plus 22% ward save, which means that his final amount of HP will be quite difficult to take out. We do indeed manage to win out the game. Definitely a little bit of a close one, but after the mid game, I felt like we were in a pretty decent position. There was the worry that we would get shot to death, but the ammunition eventually did run out, and we could carry out the win. I think the major misplay with me, as usual, is my control of the cavalry. Horse cavalry can always be controlled better, and I sort of let them die a little bit too quickly. A mass skink army is extremely vulnerable to this type of mobility, and having them die so quickly, just trading them out, really was a bad choice. My opponent did lose his Lord though, Nakai, and that's what made our Lord win it out in the end. So next up is Bretonnia against Wood Elves. But tools for many different types of Wood Elf builds, and it looks like this time it's going to be a kite style. We have some what appears to be Way Watchers, just based on their range and the distance. And what we want to do is to bring our cavalry into position to actually flank around them, and then engage on top of them as quickly as possible. Our peasants will be shielding the front line. See, these guys need to go there. And our peasant bowmen will just be continuously advancing. If the Way Watchers do fire it in onto them, we can move in the peasant bowmen. And yeah, get some shots off on the Way Watchers. That'll be good damage. And if we can just converge on these guys as quickly as possible, we should be good. Durthu hiding out in the forest, looking to intercept my cavalry. Also some wild riders in the forest, but we do have a very strong cavalry advantage. One of our paladins does overextend a tiny bit, a little bit of a misplay there, but we're still good. He does make it on top of the Way Watchers, and our cavalry is looking to engage on there too. Meanwhile, our peasant bowmen will continue to advance, and Durthu can't really possibly defend all of these archers. He is summoning some manticores, but I don't think that'll be enough, just because we have so many cavalry now engaging onto the Way Watchers. And yeah, that should be generally a pretty rough situation. Durthu, in fact, bailing out on the Way Watchers to instead engage onto my peasants. If he does charge towards my archers, we can simply retreat with them. And as for the Way Watchers, they are basically out of the fight here. One of our paladins does die to a manticore or get routed. He should come back though, and that should work out pretty well. Durthu will continue to pepper him with arrows, and with the Way Watcher shut down, I think we've secured ourselves a pretty nice lead. Manticore's on its way out too, and the double paladin will be saved for late game to cycle charge Durthu. For now, let's bring them into the cavalry, as that's the fight that we want to be winning. And for the cavalry forces here, we'll use them to hit these Eternal Guard. We're just clearing up the infantry now and finishing up the rest of the Wood Elf forces, so that they... yeah, we're finishing off the rest of the Wood Elf forces, just so that it's just Durthu left, and then we can cycle charge them with those paladins. These Glade Riders are a little bit of a pain, but they don't really have enough ammunition to really win out the game on their own. So as soon as these Eternal Guard spears are gone, I think we should be good. We've won the cavalry fights all round. There's barely any infantry left for the Wood Elves. And now it's time to dive in on top of Durthu. We'll throw down another heal just to hit my Knights of the Realm. And another Manticore is coming down, so we'll have to bring back the Fey Enchantress to safety. And we're going to actually send in the Paladins in to fight it. Just because I'm curious to see if the Paladins actually have what it takes to beat a Manticore if they do charge in. Just being able to win out that fight quickly will be a huge advantage, just because the Manticore actually charging in is quite scary. And it looks like the double Paladin is doing quite great versus the Manticore. They've taken it down to half HP without getting hit themselves. And that is a huge loss of Winds of Magic for Durthu. Now, these Glade Riders, they haven't actually routed off my Peasant Archers, so we're going to charge them with our Cavalry, and that should be able to kill them off. So, yeah, we'll just go ahead and charge into them. It looks like they do get routed, and it's actually going to be army losses for our opponent. I guess our cavalry was just at such high HP, and that our heroes were such high HP too that we could just carry out a win. So there we go. Nice. So cool. I think that might have technically been a rule break on the forest camping rules, but it was we did manage to win it out anyways, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, so there we go. Take a look at our cavalry. They did amazing because they were killing White Watchers. And yeah, it's when you go for a mass kite build as the Wood Elves, you really have to worry about mass cavalry. You cannot really fight them with Wild Riders, and yeah, it's just really hard to defend these guys. They barely got any value. And as we go into this game against Papa Palpatine, it's going to be Bretonnia against Chaos. We've gone for an armor debuff build with King Lewin, not going for the Fey Enchantress since she is pretty vulnerable to getting sniped here by the likes of Kolek, who is on the battlefield. Our opponent has a usual build of Dragon Ogre Shaggots. He has some skirmishers and a lot of elite infantry and a marauder frontline. So marauders, we want to be sending in our Foot Squires? Yeah, Foot Squires in to engage on top of them. And while they win the fight, to make sure that no monsters come in to actually support, we'll have our our Bretonian cavalry here to actually... Oh, there's some dogs in the back. Haha, I looked at the minimap for once. So, yeah, we're going to bring up our archers, and to deal with the dogs, we'll have knights sort of bounce between the front line and the back line. That's going to be the plan. And here we go. So Kolek has begun to engage to try and defend the frontline fight. And this is the opportunity to send in Lewin. We'll then move in with our archers, move in with our cavalry, throw in a debuff, and then that should be good. We'll debuff the armor some more so that the charge hurts. And then we're going to use our knights to defend against the dogs. So we've stacked up debuffs here, have all of our cavalry engaged. And this is sort of the main play you need to do as Bretonnia to really break the armor of Chaos. Our Foot Squires will hold very well, and while the Hounds retreat, we're going to bounce into the front line with our cavalry. Lewin is taking a lot of damage from Kolek, and let's see, I think we're going to throw down a heal here. Our cavalry is also having a pretty rough time. These guys that are retreating will be defending against the dogs. And we pulled back a little bit too slowly here, but we should still be able to defend against them. Meanwhile, Foot Squires have done well against the Marauders. We are actually getting some of our casters caught out, though. We'll have to be careful. But our archers are still able to fire. We almost have another Curse of the Midnight Wind. But right now, I think we're going to try avoiding Kolek. We actually took a lot of damage on that engagement. And we don't want to get too beat up there. Foot Squires are still doing good, though. And let's see, I think at this point we'll be regrouping our cavalry and charging these dragon ogres. Going to send in Lewin to help with that since Kolek is far away. And it looks like we may even get a solid win on the front line fight here. Some dogs are chasing off my archers. And a big spell is coming down from the dragon ogres, but looks like not too many of our cavalry units are getting caught up. Things are still going well there. Kolek will be taking constant chip damage from my archers at this point. And we can also start cycle charging him with Lewin. Lewin has his regeneration, so that should work out pretty well. We do lose a lot of our cavalry units though, and our archers are about to get collapsed in on by the Chaos Infantry. Fully, they are pretty mobile and we can pull back with them. But there is a big problem that Lewin taking quite a beating. Let's see, we do have a Curse of the Midnight Wind, and I guess in 20 seconds we're going to try to make a big play and send in Lewin to actually deal with Kolek here. We'll have our cavalry at the ready. There aren't any dragon ogres. Just that the Marauder horsemen can be quite the pain since they'll be peppering my cavalry. But nevertheless, we're going to go for the big play now. We're charging in with Lewin. We're procking our debuffs, and we're going to try to snipe out Kolek. That's basically our main way of trying to come back here. Because if we can just break the leadership of Chaos, then the rest of their troops will be very prone to routing because of Lewin. We can extend the game with our archers, and from there just cycle charge things down, and that should work out pretty well. We did lose a unit of cavalry trying to deal with Kolek, but we do manage to get him to rout, so I think it was worth it. He's now running off the battlefield, and Lewin is still pretty healthy. The question is, do we have what it takes to actually finish out the rest of the infantry here? We don't have a lot of cavalry left, and that's what we really wanted to win here. The dogs actually killing Grail Knights. Big disappointment there. But nevertheless, we still have some infantry, and Lewin can indeed cycle charge. Let's see here. How many dogs are left? I think there's only one unit of dogs left anyways. So it's not impossible, but still a pretty rough situation. The snipe on Kolek was good, but we don't have that cavalry. Nevertheless, Lewin is still quite a beast himself. I expect he should be able to fare decently well here, but the balance of power does not like me, because really it is going to be just Lewin carrying the game on his back now. We're sending in the peasants here, deal with the dragon ogres. Kolek does actually come back from routing. That is terrible. And the fact that my opponent has a lot of mobility is definitely worrisome. But we'll throw down another heal. We'll send in Lewin and try and take out those dragon ogres. These halberds are at really high HP. And that could be the end of us. Dogs are going in to chase off the rest of my troops. And we only have one unit of knights left, but they may still be my saving grace. Lewin is going to charge into these Marauder horsemen and just continue to bounce around these troops. If we could actually get Kolek to rout too, that could cause some mass terror routs on the Chaos side. So that's going to be the hope. Marauder horsemen do chase off my troops, and Lewin actually routs. Oh no, that's really bad. We'll try and heal him up to bring him back, but I think we might have just lost this match. Nevertheless, we'll still stick in just in case. But it looks like that's going to be GG, unless maybe he does come back. No, it's army losses. GG. Okay, so I think we almost had it there. If we actually killed Kolek, I think the mass routs would have done better. I think also my cavalry control again sort of failed me. They did okay, but losing them in the late game was really terrible. As for these Chaos Warhounds, they were able to make some pretty good value. And I could have done a better job defending against them. As for my foot squires, they did quite well. They actually hold the line extremely long, and I think they're generally pretty good. For my single entity control, I probably could have been poking Kolek a little bit more with Lewin. But nevertheless, I think that was a pretty good scrap. I think it was definitely within the realms of me winning there, but I just needed to play a little bit better. So now to counterpick against the Beastmen, we have the Tomb Kings. And we're going to be using our skirmishers to try and buy us an advantage here. We're going to move up and immediately start peppering these Razor Gore herd. Razor Gores are glass cannons, and finishing them off and putting in damage onto them early is a great situation. Yeah, it's putting in damage on them early is really nice because you can get them to rampage faster, which is very important. Okay, so yeah, we just retreated a bit, and we're going to continue pestering these Gore herd. We'll be bringing in our cavalry to charge them. And we can even cycle charge these Gore herd right now, since it looks like these guys aren't moving into position. And then we'll pull back as quickly as possible before we get cycle charged, etc. We'll be moving, bouncing between infantry, casting his AoE spells to escape, and also giving himself some physical resist to avoid most of the damage. And for these chariots, we have our Necropolis Knights. So I'm feeling pretty confident there. Bring in our troops to cycle charge these spearmen, since they won't be braced. And for these Centaurs, be hitting them with the cavalry. Big spell goes down in on the center there. Does a pretty decent amount of damage, but we're still doing okay. And so far it looks like Cetra's doing quite good too. And Acropolis Knights are taking a lot of damage in this engagement though, so we're going to pull back with them. I'm going to try to get Cetra to, I guess, fight off these Razor Gore herd while we free up our cavalry to charge into the Beastmen infantry. Let's see, I think the Knights, the Necropolis Knights, will do better versus Centaurs over there, where we will push them. And we want to get Cetra out of this position as quickly as possible. Another big spell comes down on my horseman, does a lot of damage. And we're a little bit worried this game. Let's see here. Our infantry fights haven't been getting won especially greatly. And our right flank is collapsing quite rapidly. That's definitely not great. Nahak, our horsemen, fighting some Centaurs over there. We'll trade about evenly, but they're healthier, so I think they'll do fine. Oh man, but big charges comes in is pretty bad, and I think my opponent might have gotten this game. We'll have to see though. We're going to try making bigger and riskier plays to try and come back, and the goal is to surround Khazrak and to snipe him off. We've used an Ushabti summon, but it did recently get nerfed. It takes a much longer to actually get up, but nevertheless, we do find a nice position behind these chariots. And if we can actually snipe out Khazrak here, that may be our one chance at victory. Because our infantry is having a very hard time. And breaking the leadership of the Beastmen is all we really have left. So we'll continue to try and chase him. We have the Ushabti slowing him down, same with our cavalry. And Cetra is on the hunt. As for our skirmishers, we're retreating with them. And we'll put them on skirmish mode to keep them away from the Centaurs. We'll see if we can deal with Khazrak here. He is still quite a hard target to take down. And he does actually manage to escape. Which is very rough. There's still a lot of Beastmen mobility. So let's see what we can do. Let's see. I guess we just have to get Cetra into a big fight against him. It is up against all these single entities, so he will be taking a lot of damage. But we'll have to rely on RNG here. We are quite behind. And wow, he gets taken out by Khazrak along with the two heroes. I think that's going to be GG. We'll throw down one final buff, but Cetra goes down. And that's gonna be it. Papa Palpatine taking out solid 2-0 victory there. Oh, whoops, I forgot to update his score. Go ahead and do that. And end the battle. Nice, so some very good play there. I think my Necropolis Knights overextended, and so did Cetra. Some big misplays there, and Papa Palpatine did very good capitalizing on top of it. Some very inefficient trades eventually led to my troops getting overrun. Even though I did opt for a lot of mobility, it actually was much less than the Beastmen front, and generally he traded out much better there. So not much else to say there. And I think just have to call it GG. So for our third best of 3 today, we're up against Legion. And we've brought a build that relies on, that is more of a rush Tomb Kings build. We have just a few skirmishers here for counter skirmish. And to deal with any large targets or single entities, we have 2 Tomb Scorpions plus Cetra. To hit Savage Orcs and a cheaper backline, we have our chariots here. And it's going to be imperative that we micro them as well as possible. Be good practice for me, since it's not usually what I practice or what I play, but the practice will do quite good. So Legion has gone for actually he's gone for pump wagons. Very unconventional. Actually has a few units of pump wagons here, and some of them are getting stuck behind the stone trolls. An interesting situation. Let's see, right now our cavalry skirmish is going okay, but not amazing. I think we're trading a little bit down here. Some forest goblins, fighter riders are moving in too, but we actually get the charge in with our Nahakar horsemen. But these night goblins may throw in some fanatics that could ruin our day. So we'll be especially wary against that. Stone trolls waiting on the perimeters. Something to be careful of, but we do manage to get a pretty solid charge onto the infantry. The trolls counter charge, but they won't be able to hit for too much. And now we actually have the infantry fights going on. So Nahakara horsemen are going to pull back. They don't want to stay in a fight for too long, and my goal is to actually keep my troops alive as long as possible. Cetra is in a dangerous position with the greenskin forces moving in towards him. And we're going to pull him back. And now we're going to bring in our chariots to hit up these night goblin RORs. So, let's see. We want to group our single entities, and we're going to bring them in onto these stone trolls. Feels like the best option. And by hitting up the stone trolls, we should be able to get them to rout with the combined forces there. Along the right flank to support that, we have our Necrotect. We'll be charging into the greenskin infantry. And if we can just take out enough of their forces and hold enough of our flanks, we should have enough infantry left to cycle charge the rest of his army. He does buff up the leadership of his trolls here. But we're still doing pretty well. We actually rout off one. And on the left flank, we're also winning there too. So generally going pretty well. Our single entities are still strong, and we're keeping a close eye on Skarsnik here. He can be quite the fighter, and we don't want to give him an advantaged fight. But now that the trolls have actually routed, we're going to push our infantry forwards to screen, because the trolls will surely come back. And then we're going to dive in on Skarsnik with our single entities. This isn't part of the general plan of the build, but instead just taking a nice opportunity that has presented itself. So we're focus firing him to the best of our abilities, seeing if we can take him out. We'll be throwing buffs down on Cetra, and using our cavalry to chase off the skirmishers. A summon of Ushabti right here into the Orc Boys means that they will be able to get a lot of value, and we're not trying to catch any targets with them, just because Ushabti summons are a little bit more, they're a little bit harder to actually catch troops with now. Let's see. Now it looks like my gooning attempts on Skarsnik have failed. We actually missed a lot of those attacks, but perhaps I wasn't controlling my troops well enough to actually get on top of him. Nevertheless, the middle fight is still going okay. Our cavalry is still decently healthy, and we'll be bouncing between the right flank and the center, causing as many routes as we can. And that may be the way that we deal with the stone trolls. Our cavalry is surrounded here, which was a pretty big misplay by me. But we can throw down a physical resist buff on them, and that'll just have them buy time as long as possible. Time for us to finish off this Orc Shaman, and also time to hunt down Skarsnik if he decides to get close. However, instead deciding to play fairly far away and safe from the Tomb Scorpions, instead we'll be able to just fight off against the trolls here with our single entities. And then we should be good. Going for monstrous troops here in this matchup can work out quite well. Since, as you can see, grouped up together, they do pretty well against the likes of stone trolls. So, to just really continue to push that advantage, we'll now hunt down the Orc Shaman. And continue pressing forwards with our troops. We don't really need to chase off the stone trolls, since they will be shattering the next time they decide to engage on me. And there's no Black Orc Big Boss to actually keep them in the fight. Garsnik is getting in some hits onto my Tomb Scorpions now, though. And to remedy that, we'll just give them some physical resist buffs. And they should be able to fight Skarsnik, no problem. Setra will be charging in too, throwing down his buffs. And as soon as we're done with that, I think we have a solid win on our hands. Skarsnik now surrounded. Can't do much. We'll throw down some heals onto the Scorpions too. I think we did it. Big spell comes down but misses. And nice. It seems like going for the unconventional build may have helped us quite a bit too, since these pump wagons, who would have been good against a more ranged focus build, were much less effective here. And yeah, just pushing that advantage seems to be working out. But man, Skarsnik is actually really hard to kill. I've been hunting him for basically the whole game with our troops. But it doesn't matter. We do squeak by that win. Things went pretty well. I am happy. Oh, and they weren't even stone trolls. Oh my gosh. The ultimate misreads on my part. But yes, nevertheless, the trolls did take quite a beating from the Scorpions. They didn't get much value. And if you look at the Scorpions, they did okay. Our chariots did quite well, and our cavalry got close to paying for itself. So I think on that front we did fine, but our skirmishers definitely shouldn't have died. Something to work on for the future, but still good that we managed to pull out that win. So for our second game against Legion, it's going to be Bretonnia against Vampire accounts, and we've opted for the air battle. But the Red Duke, let's see, Red Duke does have, he has a Hex type ability, and that's it. Which means that we absolutely dominate the air game. So that's actually a really rough situation for my opponent, and we're going to start chasing off the Red Duke with our flyers. He does not have, yep, he doesn't have Tempest. He's mostly there to fight off single entities. So this is great. Very happy we didn't go for the Fey Enchantress here. And let's see, I guess we'll begin shooting with our archers now. As an archers will be focusing in on the Crypt Horrors, and that should be able to take out the majority of them. We'll bring in the spears too to support. And if we can just catch out this hero, that should be nice. We'll pull off the Pegasus Knights to go and fight over to cycle charge the Crypt Horrors. And we've fended off the Fellbats. Now there are some dog units coming into the back. And it looks like this black coach is coming in too, a little bit scary. Oh, and we also let some dogs dive into our archers. So not optimal, but now we can start using our air advantage. I will be using Lewin and the Paladin to snipe out targets. And specifically, they want to be doing stuff like this Mortis Engine. The Lewin is going to be charging in on there. Our archers will sadly be falling, but I think we may still be okay. Beast Slayers of Bastogne should be able to fight quite well. We are able to take out the Mortis Engine, and this Grail Relique is really good for making sure our front line holds as long as possible. Dogs are on their way out. And let's see, if Lewin could just continue pushing towards the Mortis Engine, that would be good. However, it does actually manage to escape. And now we have Crypt Horrors charging in on Lewin. However, we've looped with our Pegasus Knights, and they'll be able to charge in. And they should be able to take out the Crypt Horrors, especially with the melee defense debuff here coming in from Lewin. Should work pretty well, but balance of power is slipping out of our favor. We are able to take out a lot of the single entities here for our opponent. But the fact that the Mortis engine is still alive worries me quite a great deal. However, at this point, it is getting into a position where it is more snipeable. We're going to send in our Paladin and Lewin to deal with it and start grouping up our troops into that fight. The Red Duke, too, is a little bit scary. He could very well goon out Lewin, and we'll have to see how that goes. Mortis Engine 2 has turned towards him, and he's killed off my healer. It's definitely not great. Pegasus Knights will be able to support, though, bringing them in. Beast Slayers are being stopped. Man, will these guys turn? What are you doing? Charge, darn you, charge. One Pegasus Knight getting caught by zombies, actually causing them to not charge where I need them. But they do finally turn, and they land on top of the Crypt Horrors. However, some nice control by Legion, keeping that Mortis engine safe despite my air advantage. But the balance of power is mostly here because of the double black coach. And in the late game, they aren't nearly as scary versus my forces here. So I think we should still be okay. These, the Beast Slayers are still relatively healthy too. And with the mobility of these Pegasus Knights, we should be fine. See, some Crypt Ghouls are moving on here. We'll position our peasants to fire in on them. And I think we've finally taken out the Mortis engine. So that's a huge plus. We'll get a huge cycle charge on these Crypt Horrors too. And let's see, from there, hopefully can even win the single entity fight. The Red Duke against Lewin and a Paladin. We'll have to see how that turns out. I think black coaches are a little bit of a worry, but generally I'm feeling decently confident in this fight. Mortis engine is now down, so healing is a little bit more of a problem. We can also bring in our flyers in to support. We'll charge them towards the Red Duke, but a big charge does come down on Lewin. He takes a good deal of damage, but now we've surrounded the Red Duke with our flyers. We have buffs coming in 5 seconds, and if we can take him out with Lewin, that would actually be almost just a straight up win from there. A big debuff on melee defense too will work out pretty well. But the Red Duke does manage to take off, and it looks like he will be looping around towards Lewin. So we'll see how that goes. We're going to try to juke him, and it looks like we do manage to dodge him. We can take off with Lewin now, and with the support of the Pegasus Knights, we should be fine. We buff up the leadership to keep them in the fight as long as possible. And we're trying to take off with Lewin, but he is not flying. Let's see, we'll charge in over onto the infantry there, but he's in a very rough position. I think he will get taken out, and that's looking to be army losses. So GG. I think that was just some really nice control from Legion there. Doing a really good job with the Mortis engine, and also the fact that I probably could have sniped targets out better with my flyers. I might have been a little bit too timid there with them in the early game. And the fact that I lost all my troops to dogs was really bad. The positioning could have been better. And I think in general, my control protecting against the dogs could definitely be worked on. It's happened multiple times now where my archers aren't able to stay alive. So I'll want to change that. I'll want to change that for sure. Let's see. Lewin and the Paladin did okay. Losing the caster was quite bad. Keeping my flyers in reserve actually might have been the better option instead of playing so aggressively with them. And I think that's going to be the play next time. Pegasus Knights would kill the dogs. Lewin would kill anything trying to snipe out my damsel. So this next game, up against Legion, we've brought Empire to his Skaven. It looks like he's gone for a rush build. Looking around, we don't see any wolf rats, but they could come out from the shadows behind us. Now, to start off, we're going to move in our spears to defend our archers. And then we're going to be cycle charging the infantry as best we can. Pistoliers will be focusing on the monstrous units here, like the Morscatar's Hellion. And our Bright Wizard will be moving in on top to fireball the assassin, probably. That seems like a pretty good choice. So, our backline is a little bit exposed. still fairly good. We're going to advance the front line just a tiny bit. Going to begin cycle charging with that cavalry. Huntsman will be focus firing the Grey Seer, and Boris will see if he can get some charges off. Our cavalry does slam into the front line of the Skaven, doing quite well. We're going to advance with the Flagellants. It looks like some Storm Vermin summons have gone in on top of my cannons, but I didn't really value the cannon too much anyways, although it is a little bit unfortunate, but at least that's a lot of Winds of Magic used up. Our cavalry are really important for actually sniping out the infantry. So we'll move up with our Huntsman a tiny bit, and we're going to continue sniping out the Morscatar's Hellion. Vixtrin's Death Squad definitely don't want to get cycle charged, so that's what we'll give them. And we have a Burning Head in case we need it. No great positions yet to really use it to our full advantage though. So we'll just keep holding on to it. Let's see, this is a pretty nice Burning Head angle though. Oh, it is on the Clan Vulcan Tail Slashers though, so I think it won't be nearly as effective. A little bit of a waste of Winds of Magic, but nevertheless still does okay. Our cavalry on the right side is doing good, but we left them in combat for a bit too long. You can tell because of how much damage they actually took. And the cavalry on the left side is also taking a bit too much damage. So we'll have to worry about that. But we're just going to pull in our spears to continue defending our archers, and as long as they can keep shooting, a lot of the big monsters here for the Skaven will be getting taken out. Our caster too is in a really safe position. He's flying and there's no Skaven air force to actually punish him. So that's pretty good. And with the assassin so low, I think we can even use Boris to start sniping out that lord. Our cavalry will continue charging there. And the forces along the right hand side are looking to be falling. That's really unfortunate. But we are getting some nice picks here. Boris hitting quite hard, and on the left side it looks like our cavalry advantage is paying off. However, the pit fighters are holding out quite nicely. Can bring in Boris, but they are immune to psychology, which is not great. Not great, but we'll bring in Boris. We have our cavalry there, and if we can just get off some routes, that'll be good. We get a terror route, and now we can swoop in into the backs of those ogres with the cavalry, and then we should be able to stabilize there. Along the right flank, we're retreating with our troops, and pulling them into safer positions until Boris can come in to assist, after which we will dive in, and that should work out pretty well. The Morscatar's Hellion, we shall be fireballing, and Boris is now going to be charging into this Grey Seer. There is not a lot of support here, just some Clan Rat spears, and actually first off the Morscatars. So charging into that with Boris. We'll send in the Bright Wizard too, since we're starting to run out of ammo, or of Winds of Magic. And if we can get some big picks here, that would be good. The main goal here is take out the single entities for the Skaven, and then use Boris to carry out the win. We rout off the Rat Ogre, we can now retreat with Boris and get him into position to now snipe out that single entity. Our recovering troops are going to be peeling to make sure that the Rat Ogres don't do as much damage. And now that we have Boris in a safe position, we're feeling pretty good. Assassin is coming in, and Morscatar's Hellion has also returned. I don't really have a great way of dealing with the Assassin, so we'll fireball him instead of the Ogre, since we can just charge it with Boris. And let's see if we can actually get that fireball off. I'm not sure if it missed. It might have missed. That's pretty bad. Let's see here. So how do we want to do this? How do we want to do this? We still have 2 single entities for the Skaven that we want to take out. And let's see, we can likely snipe out this with Boris, then bounce to the Assassin, and then take out the Bell. Our caster has actually gone into melee combat. A bit of a misplay, did not intend that, but he will be able to escape. And can take out this big monster. We should be fine, but he does manage with his last breath to take out a lot of my cavalry forces here. Not great. However, the fact that the balance of power likes us does fill me with hope So we do route it off for the second time. It's now low enough where it should really be no problem. And Boris is at very high HP. I still don't want to play too riskily with him. And we would rather he cycle charge, but he is in a very nice situation here. In that he's at high HP, he'll likely be able to duel out against any of these guys. So we'll send him in onto the Plague Priest to try and get some hits. And hopefully he can take it out. The Assassin is quite worrying. But it is just an Assassin against a full HP Boris. I think we should be fine. Although it looks like he does get slowed and bogged down a little bit. We'll have to pull him back into the sky once again. We'll then be using fireballs to take out the Assassin. He may have a hard time dodging. We'll have to see. Oh, thank goodness the fireball does hit. And with our infantry on the right side, fighting off the Clan Rat spears, we should be good. There's not a whole lot left for the Skaven in terms of single entities, and that is going to be the advantage that we pull out here. So we're going to chase off these troops, and now that the bell is actually out of position, we'll land with Boris and hopefully take it out. Morskatar's Hellion, actually, with surprising leadership, manages to stay until the end, until we actually kill him with Boris. But he will go down. Then we should be good to go. As long as we can actually hit him with Boris. Come on, Boris. Kill it, please. Come on. Alright, so Boris is having a really hard time hitting this thing. I'm not sure what's happening, but hopefully he'll take it out with the final attack, and then we can kill the Gracier. But what an absolute beast this creature is. At 48 melee attack, actually kills off Boris. What just happened? Alright, well, GG. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it. Well, likely we should have gone for a cycle charge instead, because that was absolutely brutal. Turns out my fireball on the Assassin was a terrible idea. As we just saw, some pretty brutal RNG. Nevertheless, it happens, and Legion did still play quite well. Had some good snipes on my artillery, and also managed to keep his Gracier alive. The Morskatar's Hellion too, getting in that massive damage, and my lack of proper priority targeting did manage to punish me out. So that's going to be GG. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it came back at like 200 HP to kill Boris. That was insanity. But yeah, that was still a really fun game. And also, the last game for today.